disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. And the readers today are
Lita
and JJ Patak. And we'll open, as we do, with the weather, which is improving.
Yay!
Yay! Spring is on its way. Well, today we have a little snow, sleet, and rain late this morning, followed by periods of rain this afternoon with a high of 40. That will be welcome. And then cloudy tonight with a little rain, ending before temperatures fall below freezing with a low of 30. Mostly cloudy tomorrow with a high of 47 and a low of 36. Thursday we'll have periods of rain with a high of 48 and a low of 42. That'll be welcome. And Friday it'll be low clouds with a high of 50 and a low of 44. So spring is coming quickly. And then Saturday we'll have periods of rain with a high of 58 and a low of 39. Sunday we'll have a few showers in the afternoon and a high of 51 and a low of 53. And Monday back up again. We have decreasing clouds and a high of 57 and a low of 47. And yesterday's high was 28, yesterday's low was 11, and the normal high is 37, the normal low is 23. The record high was 66 degrees back in 1991. The record low was minus 5 in 1980, and last year's high was 22, and the last year's low was 10 degrees. For the national cities, the high was in Presidio, Texas at 92, and the low was right here in New York State, Saranac Lake at minus 24. They're over on the other side where the coastal stuff is going on.
That's awful.
Yeah, they can have it. The air quality index today is good. The Skywatch, the sun rose this morning at 6:48 a.m., was partly cloudy and a rather pretty sunrise. The sun will set at 6:07 p.m. The moon will rise at 6:38 p.m. and there was an early set this morning at 6:51 a.m. just after the sun rose. So that's the weather for today.
And reluctant U.S. allies are forced to choose while conflict expands. A British base in Cyprus struck by a drone. A French facility in Abu Dhabi targeted. A base hosting Italian troops in Kuwait hit. Saudi oil facilities attacked as ships queue outside the Strait of Hormuz. Missiles over Bahrain and Qatar. Gulf airspace shut down. In just over 48 hours since the U.S. and Israel began striking Iran, the conflict has widened. Countries that say they aren't part of it are already being pulled in, their bases, infrastructure, and citizens exposed to retaliation. At some point, Americans' allies will have to choose. The longer the fighting goes on, the harder it becomes to stay on the sidelines. The risk is that reluctant states are drawn into it, creating a coalition of the unwilling. Even limited involvement carries consequences. Bases used today can become targets tomorrow. Governments that take even a limited role can face retaliation long after the missiles stop flying through renewed strikes, proxy attacks, or terrorism years down the line. For some leaders, the calculation is fraught. Refuse Washington and risk a rupture with President Trump. Lean in and face political backlash at home from voters wary of another Middle East war. Allies are in a position where they can't support it and they can't not support it, said Jeremy Shapiro, research director of the European Council on Foreign Relations and a former Obama administration official. They hate it, but they can't not support it because the United States is too wound up in their defense and the Iranian regime is too odious. No capitals face more immediate danger than those lining the Gulf, where oil terminals, refineries, airports, and shipping lanes sit within range of Iranian missiles and drones. Interceptions and falling debris have already caused damage on the ground. The UAE reported fatalities in airports in Dubai and Abu Dhabi were struck. Saudi Arabia halted operations at Ras Tanura oil facility after it was targeted as Houthi rebels in neighboring Yemen vowed to renew attacks on global shipping. Gulf government has publicly urged restraint, but in emergency meetings, officials have made clear they reserve the right to respond in self-defense, even as they stress they are not joining the U.S.-Israel effort. A senior Western official based in the Gulf said some regional governments believe Trump was pushed into the war by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and is now in deeper than he intended. Anger is rising as leaders search for a way to protect their populations, the officials added, arguing the only exit may be persuading Trump to declare victory and step back. It hasn't helped that the U.S. leader has offered various and often contradictory goals for the war, saying at times that it'll be 3 or 4 weeks, arguing it's about Iranian freedom, but also that he'll negotiate with the regime's remnants. Confusion reigns supreme due to the lack of clear U.S. strategy and endgame, said Badr al-Saif, an assistant professor at Kuwait University and an associate fellow at Chatham House. Gulf states may be forced to defend themselves, even if they don't join the U.S.-Israel effort, he said. Everything is on the table. For Britain, Washington's closest ally in Europe and often expected to stand with the U.S. in moments of crisis, the choice has been fraught. In the weeks before the U.S. military action, the U.K. denied permission to use the joint base at Diego Garcia and an air base in England for a strike over legal and policy concerns. When the attack went ahead, Britain stressed it had not taken part. Senior ministers declined to say whether they believed the operation was lawful. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour Party still carries scars from Tony Blair's decision to join the 2003 invasion of Iraq. When he shifted course, Starmer invoked the need to avoid repeating this mistake of Iraq. Still, in Iranian threats mounted against British bases, civilians, Gulf allies, the government concluded it was within international law to allow U.S. forces to use British facilities for a limited defense purpose, targeting missiles, storage depots, and soon after a suspected drone strike, RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus, though a military assessment determined it was launched before his announcement rather than in retaliation. Trump told the Daily Telegraph he was very disappointed in Starmer for initially blocking U.S. use of Diego Garcia bases for strikes on Iran, saying Starmer took far too long to grant access to the facility, a reminder of how quickly the president can turn on even those close allies who hesitate. That's probably never happened between our countries before, Trump said. Though rare, it has happened. Another former labor leader, Harold Wilson, famously resisted U.S. pressure to deploy British troops to Vietnam in the 1960s. Trump's demand put allies in near impossible positions, said Rachel Rizzo, an expert in transatlantic relations and senior fellow with the Observer Research Foundation in Delhi. They have to weigh multiple things at once: public opinion, their relationship with the United States, and their own national security, she said. Trump having an answer to allies' position is a constraint, and he doesn't like it. Other European governments are trying to draw tighter lines. France and Germany issued a joint statement alongside the UK stressing they didn't take part in the initial strikes while leaving room for defensive action. European officials are wary of escalation and uneasy about being drawn into a conflict they did not initiate. Yet their base and personnel sit within the widening arc of the war. A French military installation in Abu Dhabi was hit, and a base hosting Italian personnel in Kuwait was also struck, though no Italian troops were injured. President Emmanuel Macron said Sunday that France would step up its defensive posture in the Middle East after the U.S.-Israeli strikes, pledging to protect French citizens and bases and to stand alongside countries targeted by Iran under existing defense treaties. Beniamino Erdi, a senior fellow at the German Marshall Fund and former Italian government official, said Trump's lack of coordination with European allies make it more difficult to persuade them to participate. If neither tactic actions nor strategic objectives are coordinated with allies, it becomes harder to see why they should put skin in the game, he said. JJ?
Goodness. Not really good.
It's a mess.
Trump says campaign in Iran is expected to last several weeks. This is from John Gambrill, Melanie Lidman, and Sami Magbi at Associated Press. Israel and the United States pounded Iran on Monday in a campaign that President Trump said would likely take several weeks. Tehran and its allies hit back at Israel, Gulf states, and targets critical to the world's energy production. The intensity of the attacks, the killing of Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and the lack of any apparent exit plan set the stage for a prolonged conflict with far-reaching consequences. Safe havens in the Middle East like Dubai have seen incoming fire. Hundreds of thousands of airline passengers are stranded around the globe. Oil prices shot up, and U.S. allies pledged to stop Iranian missiles and drones. With no signs of the conflict abating anytime soon, Trump said operations are likely to last 4 to 5 weeks, but that he was prepared to go far longer than that. He said U.S. forces were determined to destroy Iran's missile capabilities, wipe out its navy, prevent it from obtaining a nuclear weapon, and ensure that it cannot continue to support allied troops like Lebanon's Hezbollah. This was our last best chance to strike, what we're doing right now, and eliminate the intolerable threats posed by this sick and sinister regime, Trump said. Danny Danon, the Israeli ambassador to the UN, said the conflict would continue as long as it takes. An Israeli military spokesman, Brigadier General Efi Defrin, said Israel is keeping all options on the table, including a potential ground invasion of Lebanon. The chaos of the conflict became apparent when the U.S. military said Kuwait had mistakenly shot down 3 American F-15E Strike Eagles while Iran was attacking with aircraft, ballistic missiles, and drones, the U.S. Central Command said. All 6 pilots ejected safely are in a stable condition. As several airstrikes hit Iran's capital, Tehran, the top security official, Ali Larijani, vowed on X, "We will not negotiate with the United States," and the death toll grew on all sides. The Iranian Red Crescent Society said the U.S.-Israeli operation has killed at least 555 people. In Israel, where several locations were hit by Iranian missiles, 11 people were killed. Israel's retaliatory strikes against Hezbollah killed dozens of people in Lebanon. The U.S. military announced that 2 previously unaccounted-for service members have been confirmed dead, bringing the total to 6, while 3 people were reported killed in the United Arab Emirates and 1 each in Kuwait and Bahrain. Iran's top diplomat on Monday shared an aerial photo showing rows of graves that he said were for more than 160 girls killed during a U.S.-Israeli strike on an elementary school in Minab. Their bodies were torn to shreds, Abbas Araghchi, the country's foreign minister, said on X. In Israel, 3 siblings killed by a deadly Iranian missile strike were being laid to rest on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem on Monday night. Yaakov, 16, Abigail, 15, and Sarah Biton, 13, were among the 9 killed Sunday when a missile slammed into a shelter located in a synagogue in Beth Shemesh. With world markets already rattled by the fighting, Qatar Energy said it would stop producing liquefied natural gas while taking on the world's top suppliers off the market. It offered no timeline for restoring production. European natural gas prices surged by 40% in response. Saudi Arabia's Ras Tanura oil refinery came under attack from drones, and its defenses downed an incoming aircraft, a military spokesman told a state-run Saudi press agency. The refinery has a capacity of over 500,000 barrels of crude oil a day. Several ships have been attacked in the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow mouth of the Persian Gulf through which 1/5 of all oil traded passes and where Iran has threatened attacks. The Gulf state of Qatar said its air force has shot down 2 Iranian Sukhoi Su-24 bombers. The attack on Saudi Arabia's Ras Tanura refinery marks a significant escalation, with Gulf energy infrastructure now squarely in Iran's sight, said to Torbjorn Solved, an analyst of the risks intelligence company Verisk Maplecroft. The Gulf is also a hub for air travel, and passengers have been stranded all around the world as carriers based there had grounded flights, and long-haul carriers Etihad and Emirates restarted limited flights on Monday. Reza Najafi, Iran's ambassador to the International Atomic Energy Agency, told reporters that airstrikes targeted the Natanz nuclear enrichment site on Sunday. Their justification said Iran wants to develop nuclear weapons is simply a big lie, he said. Israel and the U.S. have not acknowledged strikes at the site, which the U.S. bombed in the 12-day war between Iran and Israel in June. Israel said it had been targeting the leadership in nuclear infrastructure. Iran said it has not enriched uranium since June, although it has maintained its right to do so while saying its nuclear program is entirely peaceful. And the U.S. military said B-2 stealth bomber struck Iran's ballistic missile facilities with 2,000-pound bombs. The U.S. military said Monday it had taken out 11 Iranian warships in the Gulf of Oman. Trump asserted a day earlier that the Iranian Navy's headquarters had been largely destroyed. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said Monday that the U.S. is not engaged in a nation-building effort in Iran, but that there is a clear mission. This is not Iraq. This is not endless, Hegseth said. This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change and the world is better off for it, Hegseth also said. He added that it was no nation-building quagmire, no democracy-building exercise. It's not completely clear what the U.S. objectives are. In announcing the initial strikes, Trump referred to the threat posed by Iran's nuclear and missile programs, but he also listed various grievances dating back to Iran's 1979 Islamic Revolution and urged Iranians to take over their government. There have been no signs yet of any such uprising. Trump, however, has also signaled he'll be open to dialogue with Iran's new leadership, which could be chosen soon.
And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service, and the time is 16 minutes past the hour. Flipping over to the main editorial, a bad process. It's all finally public, as it should be. A substantial body of evidence regarding Erie County Sheriff's narcotic detective Daniel D.J. Granville's 2024 crash spree on Buffalo's west side has been released. The details are outrageous, but at least we have them. All the files related to the Buffalo Police Department's internal affairs investigation have been published. They tell a riveting and revolting story. To his credit, Mayor Sean Ryan followed through on a campaign promise to bring transparency to city government. He released more than 3,200 pages and 12 hours of audio files, including interviews with Buffalo police officers who showed up to the scene. Also released, 9/11 dispatch calls alerting police to the crashes and call logs from Granville's sister-in-law, Lucia Esquilin, then a lieutenant who was demoted to detective sergeant as a result of the internal affairs investigation. The download of information was considerably more than the public, which had every right to know, received prior to Ryan's still nascent tenure. The April 2024 incident in which Granville crashed into 7 parked cars on Jersey Street and Prospect Avenue remained shielded from public view for nearly a year until several news outlets broke the story in the spring of 2025. The time lag between the incident and the public acknowledgement was bad enough. Then there was a continued and insulting lack of communication with taxpayers, accompanied by the inaction of authorities who appeared to go easy on Granville, his sister-in-law, and likely other law enforcement personnel. Going back to 11:38 p.m. on the 11th of April in 2024, records show that there was a flood of 9/11 calls from people saying that the driver appeared to be intoxicated. Then Granville made his own key call. As reported in the news, call logs from Esquilin show that she received a call from Granville around the time of the crash. She then placed dozens of calls and text messages to law enforcement officials over the next 24 hours. The list of those contacted included officers investigating the scene, Sheriff's Office narcotic detective James DeLacy, and interim Buffalo Police Commissioner Craig Macy, who was then chief of detectives for the department. In statements given to internal affairs investigators, Esquilin said she received the call from Granville. She didn't just call the lead investigator. Instead, she arrived at the scene and drove Granville to a downtown hotel while also having his vehicle towed to the Dart Street impound lot. She took Granville from the scene before Buffalo Police Officer Thomas Karbowski, the primary investigative officer on the scene, had a chance to interview him. The story continues its downhill trajectory. Granville was not administered any sobriety test, according to documents and public statements from law enforcement officials. This omission, despite the dispatch calls saying he appeared intoxicated, is glaring. Glaring. Excuse me. Granville was initially charged with driving the wrong way down a one-way street. Later, he faced 3 counts of leaving the scene of a crash without reporting it. He eventually pleaded guilty to misdemeanor reckless driving and 1 count of leaving the scene, the latter of which is a traffic citation. Esquilin, the only one of 4 officers who responded to the scene to speak to the special prosecutor, although she and the other officers answered questions from Internal Affairs, is under scrutiny. Internal Affairs documents indicate that her actions could qualify as felony and misdemeanor crimes, tampering with evidence, official misconduct, and obstruction of governmental administration. Ryan said he could take no action at this point because the investigation and discipline process was completed before he took office. The mayor's release of this trove of information is welcome, but it reveals ongoing issues of transparency and accountability that must be thoroughly scrutinized and resolved.
Thank
JJ?
you. From Ronald Brownstein. Redistricting war spells doom for Congress's last moderates. The mid-decade congressional redistricting war that President Trump triggered is likely to end without any clear partisan benefit for either party, but the cost of the country will be substantial. Neither party is likely to net a meaningful advantage in the House of Representatives because the competing redistricting frenzies in Republican and Democrat-controlled states have largely offset each other. But the common effect of both drives will be to further reduce the already shrinking number of crossover representatives, the Democrats elected to the House from red states and the Republicans elected from blue states. That will intensify polarization in Congress, and it will accelerate the partitioning of the country into diversely impregnable and increasingly hostile spheres of influence. Once, it would not have been unusual for a state to have a mix of Democratic and Republican leaders or to vote one way for Congress and another for president. That was the case for much of the 20th century, even as recently as the late 1980s. Democrats held a majority of both House and Senate seats in the 38 states that voted consecutively 3 times for GOP Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. But now, whether a state votes Democrat or Republican for president usually dictates a state's other major offices, too. This sorting process reduces the incentive of the president and his legislative allies to consider the interests of the states that voted against him because they have so few local colleagues to worry about protecting. Trump and his aides have pushed this trend to an ominous extreme, routinely portraying the states he lost as enemy terrain. The separation of the country into these spheres of influence is rooted in the shrinking number of split-ticket voters who back one side for president and the competing party for other offices. 25 states voted for Trump in each of his 3 presidential campaigns. The GOP now holds all 50 of those states' Senate seats and 22 of their 25 governorships. In the 19 states that voted 3 times against Trump, Democrats hold 37 of those states, 38 Senate seats, and 17 of their 19 governorships. Republicans now control all the major state-level offices in 21 of the 25 Trump states, just as Democrats do in 17 of the 19 anti-Trump states, according to a new analysis. Red state Republicans have redrawn congressional lines to favor the GOP in about 9 Democrat-held seats across Texas, Ohio, North Carolina, and Missouri, with Florida poised to eliminate as many as 5 more later this spring. Blue state Democrats have responded with efforts to eliminate 5 Republican seats in California and 4 in Virginia, and are still hoping to gain 1 more each in New York and Maryland. Each party may not capture all the seats it expects from redistricting. Trump's decline with Latinos, for instance, may cost Texas Republicans some of the seats they created, but it would not be surprising if the redistricting war ends with each side losing close to 10 seats in the other party's core states. If the Supreme Court's conservative majority further weakens the Voting Rights Act, as it appears poised to do, red states could eliminate up to 12 more districts now held by non-white Democrats. More states on each side may redraw their lines in 2028, including Colorado. The result will be to intensify one of the most powerful trends transforming the House. As fewer members represent politically divided constituencies, the differences within each party are diminishing while the disagreements between them are widening. Each side has recently passed ambitious agendas with far fewer defections from their own members in the past, but neither side attracted any meaningful support from the other party, which makes those achievements more vulnerable to reversal each time control of the House and Senate changes hands. For example, Republicans in the 2025 used party line votes to erase the clean energy incentives and health care expansions Democrats approved of on party line votes under Biden. Although Republicans and Democrats no longer negotiate much with each other, each side is still compelled to consider the interests of the crossover members hailing from states controlled by the other party. Those members usually have a moderating effect on legislation, making it more balanced and durable. But that pressure to bargain internally will dwindle as the redistricting war continues. Phil Shaliro, the White House Legislative Affairs Director for former President Barack Obama, told me that while less internal negotiation will make it easier to pass bills, it will further diminish the incentive to craft legislation with support broad enough to endure. Whiplash-inducing volatility in public policy will become more routine, he warns, with severe negative consequences for the country. Doug Hay, a former House GOP leadership aide, points to another way the redistricting arms will intensify polarization. We've made even more seats where your first priority is your primary, not your general election, Hay says. The greatest risk in this partitioning extends far beyond congressional polarization. When the country is so divided between distinct spheres of political influence, it's easier for leaders and ordinary Americans alike to view the other bloc as adversaries, not neighbors. Trump's piledriver presidency is already imposing the greatest strain on the nation's fundamental cohesion since the Civil War. The redistricting frenzy is tugging further at the fraying threads of holding America together. Mm-hmm. And we have a couple of political cartoons here from Adam Zieglitz. He has a podium, and it has a whole pile of things like Epstein files, America First, no foreign wars, and economy, and they are all cut in pieces while the president is running away with a pair of scissors in his hands saying, "I ran." Take on a war we're not supposed to be involved in.
Yeah, totally different meaning.
Yeah.
But in fact.
And then Michael Ramirez from Creators Syndicate has a rather ominous-looking cartoon. We have a house crashed into the next to the Golden Brick Road with a red slippered and black and white stockinged image, which we all get from the Wizard of Oz, and that one is labeled Khomeini, and the house crash into the ground is labeled Iran.
Mm-hmm. Moving over to my view, time makes childhood memories rosier indeed. My husband Mitch refers to my childhood home as Tara, the glorious homestead featured in Gone with the Wind. My Tara was not antebellum style, it was more suburban Long Island anti-chic. But I was just as devoted to my home as Scarlett O'Hara was. We moved to Westbury when I was almost 4. My dad's sister and her family lived next door, and on the other side of our house was one of 3 homes belonging to cousins from another family. Kids of all ages played kickball, argued, and shared birthdays. We even learned the cha-cha from our neighbor Millie, who had once been a line dancer in New York City. None of us was very good or coordinated, but Millie kept up the encouragement. Back in the 60s and 70s, all the neighborhood kids felt like cousins connected by shared experiences. We were close to New York City throughout high school. I imagined living in the city as an adult, specifically on the Upper East Side. My vision included easy access to Bloomingdale's and all the new Broadway shows. I did not consider how I would afford any of it at the time. My childhood home was legendary to me because I felt safe and loved by my family and embraced by our small community. Sure, I was rebellious, always fighting rules and curfews and trying to get my way. Yet this secure foundation gave me the confidence to navigate tough times as an adult and kept me grounded. I have lived in Buffalo since 1979, but when people ask where I am from, I still often say I'm originally from Long Island. Why is that? Perhaps it connects me to a larger picture of my identity and history. There is something about where I was raised that will always be my provenance, the first chapter of my personal story. Mitch reminds me I lived only 18 years in the New York City suburb, and I've been in Buffalo much longer. Yet those formative years still coax me to say, originally from Long Island. The move to Buffalo was tough. The difference was tremendous. First, my immediate family was 400 miles away. The shallow, younger me was disappointed by the lack of shopping. Lonely Vicky could not find a friend. Nevertheless, I moved here to start my life with Mitch and was determined to overcome all the perceived hardships and make Buffalo my new home. It wasn't quick, smooth, or easy, but it happened. I slowly made friends who would become family. I found my community and felt a sense of belonging. I saw the love and devotion my new village showed my husband and me when our daughter was diagnosed with the rare chromosomal deletion. Our village stepped in when Jessica was young and volunteered at my home. Jess is now 43, and we still have the tremendous support of friends and family. Westbury will always hold a strong place in my heart, but it is no longer where I want to be. My sanctuary is now in a Buffalo suburb. My home is less about brick and mortar and more about people. My home is my family, friends, and the local community. Now, in 2026, living with my husband in Vizsla, Gus, I feel the same as I did in my childhood home. It is now my new Tara, but I promise I will not make a velvet dress from curtains a la Gone with the Wind.
I know someone from Long Island, but they don't say Long Island, they say Long Island.
Yeah. And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is 31 minutes past the hour, and that was a terrible, terrible way to say it.
Okay.
I prefer the Boston accent myself, with the R's at the end.
From another voice, Sean Levine, who is Amherst Town, or Lavin, depending on how you say that name, is its Amherst Town supervisor. And he writes, "Let them build proposal is good for Amherst." On January 30th, I had the opportunity to deliver my State of the Town address before members of the Amherst Chamber of Commerce, and one of the things I spoke about was for local government to move projects forward faster without sacrificing quality, transparency, or environmental stewardship. That same conversation is now taking place at a state level. Governor Hochul's Let Them Build proposal represents an important step toward modernizing the State Environmental Quality Review Act, the SEQR, a process that has remained largely unchanged since 1976. When SEQR was enacted, it was paramount in ensuring that development was done responsibly. That mission remains essential today. However, policies, laws, and regulations should always be reviewed objectively to reflect the government we live in, the needs of the community, and the realities of our economy. The government's Let Them Build agenda seeks to update SEQR to reduce unnecessary bureaucracy and delays that extend timelines and drive up costs that ultimately fall on renters, homeowners, and taxpayers. I believe one of the most practical and impactful aspects of the government's proposal is a recognition of previously disturbed sites that already have roads, water lines, sewer infrastructure, and a history of development. Allowing housing projects on previously disturbed land to move forward more efficiently does not mean abandoning environmental protections. Rather, it removes obstacles where the risks are already well understood. In Amherst, one reality is clear. Demand for living here is profound, and the supply of housing struggled to keep pace. While many factors contribute to this challenge, one of them is the length of time it can take to move projects through layers of review that were designed for a different era. We have opportunities to revitalize underutilized properties, strengthen neighborhoods, and expand housing options for young families, seniors, and working professionals. Good government includes recognizing that rules which once served us well may need to be refined to meet the needs of a new generation. Hochul's Let Them Build proposal is a step forward that will help towns like Amherst ensure that we remain a great place to live, work, and raise a family for decades to come.
And human capital, a key resource in America, erodes before us. America is freaking out about jobs, specifically that soon AI will do everything and leave everyone unemployable. This concern is not necessarily misplaced, but it is better understood as part of a larger worry that one of the country's most critical resources, human capital, is eroding. A large, diverse, and highly skilled labor force is what made the U.S. an economic powerhouse. Now both the stock and value of its human capital is degrading, and almost no one is doing anything to stop it. The biggest threat to America's human capital is fewer humans. As the population ages and migration declines, the size of the labor force is shrinking. That means fewer workers and consumers, and in many rich countries, more young people working to pay for the costs of older workers' retirements and the government's debt. This is a big threat to economic prosperity that the U.S. has usually mitigated through immigration, which is not a likely solution this time. There is another way a country can get by with a shrinking population: more productivity. If a young worker is so smart and skilled, he can produce the output of 3 workers, then an aging workforce is less of a problem. In the 20th century, as technology made workers more efficient and people became more educated, human capital in America became more valuable. After years of middling numbers, labor productivity increased in 2025. But these encouraging numbers aren't providing much comfort because people are worried that AI will be so productive that the need for human workers will decline anyway. I'm not saying this isn't a valid worry, only that it is old as time. In the past, technology not only made labor more productive, it also increased the demand for labor. Some jobs were lost, but new and better ones were created. Wages and employment went up. Some people who work in technology argue that this time is different, but it's way too early to be sure. First, widespread AI induces job loss, or even a lack of hiring. Can't yet be seen in the data. Many industries that use AI are the same ones doing the hiring. There is less job growth overall, but much of that can be explained by cyclical changes to the economy and a fall in migration. Second, a lot of the speculation about the ends of jobs is coming from people who've never worked in the jobs they presume will disappear. You never know what a job entails and what it takes to be good unless you've done it. A wealth manager, for example, one of the jobs said to be on borrowed time, doesn't just write reports and pick stocks. The successful ones cultivate relationships and function also as therapists. Those softer skills may become even more valuable as AI becomes more prevalent, freeing up time to spend on deeper relationships and more clients. In that case, AI could make human labor more valuable and people will still have jobs. As in the past, the most important question may be how we manage the transition to a new technology. A mismatch between skills and technology could mean a short-term decline in human capital, even if productivity numbers rise. Historically, the mismatch was addressed through education, which improved with each generation, enabling workers to work with new innovation. But education may no longer be serving the same purpose as more of the population goes to college. It may be reaching a point of diminishing returns. Even more concerning is that educational standards are weakening at the secondary and post-secondary levels. Too many graduates have weak critical thinking skills and are facing technology that is getting smarter faster. Paul Krugman says productivity isn't everything, but in the long run, it is almost everything. That almost is crucial. Even if U.S. productivity increases, as human capital degrades, it will be in trouble. Even high productivity numbers may not be enough to pay the government's debt, and there will be many people unhappily and underemployed. AI cannot be itself improved America's economic and demographic growth. That will require better education that trains students to think rigorously, as well as immigration that prioritizes highly skilled migrants. What's required, in other words, is a strategy to improve our human capital. JJ.
Thank you. From Froma Harrop, taking a peek under the hood of trade work. The skilled trades have become hot of late. That is, many young people dropping plans to attend college. Meanwhile, some desk-bound professionals daydream about trading spreadsheets for tool belts. They imagine becoming plumbers, electricians, or carpenters. The list of hands-on jobs that require real training is long. Why the change of hearts? 3 reasons. Artificial intelligence will soon do the thinking required for many of these office occupations. The realization that electricians and plumbers often make more money than a claims processor, and four-year college can cost mountains of money, whereas a skilled trades can be learned in half that time, during which a student can make money as an apprentice. But before you replace your briefcase with safety glasses, consider what these hands-on jobs entail. Toward that end, I interviewed a master plumber who also happens to be my husband, Craig. At times, Craig says he's had to carry 150-pound water heaters on his back up several flights. He's done plumbing jobs in unheated new construction when temperatures cratered into the single digits. Craig also recalls being summoned to a flooded basement during Craig also recalls being summoned to a flooded basement in an 1890s house. The water was sewage, and it came up to his thighs. Ugh, yuck. I tried to get that drain unclogged, he said. It wasn't happened. I used a submersible pump to pump out the water, but then I got to the drain. I tried snaking it and found the drain not only had to be replaced, but connected 30 feet down to the middle of a busy street. Plumbing is physical labor when combined with advanced problem solving. Another need that would-be plumbers need to understand is a considerable training required before the big pay kicks in. Craig did the 2-year plumbing course at New England Tech. Plumbers have to be proficient in English and basic math because you have to figure out angles and lengths of pipe. And so most students had to take classes to get up to speed. Craig learned all that in high school and could skip the classes. The student becomes an apprentice to a master plumber and so starts making money right away. Apprentices cannot do jobs on their own, not legally anyway. It can take 4 years before an apprentice gets licensed as a journeyman who can be sent out but remains under supervision. Becoming a master plumber easily takes 5 years, but the money is real. How much can a master plumber make? Anywhere from $30,000 to $1 million, according to Craig. The higher numbers go to entrepreneurial types who employ the others. Women are moving into these trades, but branding still sells a kind of muscled manliness. That explains the popularity of rugged Carhartt jackets and indestructible Red Wing boots, especially among professionals. High-fashion boutiques now sell them. Craig would stop at a Starbucks every day at 6 a.m. and identify the lawyers in Carhartt by their soft hands. Want to be a plumber? The bad part is the burns, the cuts, the colds, the stitches, often the heat, the strain on your body. The good part? You're not just leaving an office with some program that you screwed around with. It's something I can look at and admire the outcome. Plus, there's always work. That's the deal, and it's not a bad one.
It certainly is. And here's some advice. Take care when using chatbots to get medical advice. With hundreds of millions of people turning to chatbots for advice, it was only a matter of time before tech companies began offering programs specifically designed to answer health questions. In January, OpenAI introduced ChatGPT Health, a new version of its chatbot that the company says can analyze users' medical records, wellness apps, and wearable devices data to answer health and medical questions. Currently, there's a waiting list for the program. Anthropic, a rival AI company, offers similar features for some users of its Claude chatbot. Both companies say their programs, known as large language models, aren't a substitute for professional care and shouldn't be used to diagnose medical conditions. Instead, they say the chatbots can summarize and explain complicated test results, help prepare for a doctor's visit, or analyze important health trends buried in medical records and app metrics. Here are some things to consider before talking to a chatbot about your health. Some doctors and researchers who have worked with Chatbot GPT, Health, and similar programs see them as an improvement over the status quo. AI platforms are not perfect. They can sometimes hallucinate or provide bad advice. But the information they produce is more likely to be personalized and specific than what patients might find through a Google search. The alternative often is nothing or the patient winging it, said Dr. Robert Wachter, a medical technology expert at the University of California, San Francisco. And so I think that if you use these tools responsibly, I think you can get useful information. One advantage of the latest chatbot is that they answer users' questions with context from their medical history, including prescriptions, age, and doctor's notes. Even if you haven't given AI access to your medical information, Wachter and others recommend giving the chatbot as many details as possible to improve responses. If you have worrisome symptoms, skip AI. Wachter and others stress that there are situations when people should skip the chatbot and seek immediate medical attention. Symptoms such as shortness of breath, chest pain, or a severe headache could signal a medical emergency. Even during less urgent situations, patients and doctors should approach AI programs with a degree of healthy skepticism, said Lloyd Minor of Stanford University. If you're talking about a major medical decision or even a smaller decision about your health, you should never be relying just on what you're getting out of a large language model, said Minor, who is the dean of Stanford Medical School. And consider your privacy. Many benefits offered by AI bots stem from users sharing personal medical information, but it's important to understand that anything shared with an AI company isn't protected by the federal privacy law that normally governs sensitive medical information. Commonly known as HIPAA, the law allows for fines and even prison time for doctors, hospitals, insurers, or other health services that disclose medical records, but the law doesn't apply to companies that design chatbots. When someone is uploading their medical chart into a large language model, that is very different than handing it to a new doctor, said Minor. Consumers need to understand that they're completely different privacy standards. Both OpenAI and Anthropic say users' health information is kept separate from other types of data and is subject to additional privacy protections. The companies do not use health data to train their models. Users must opt in to share their information and can disconnect at any time. And chatbots do stumble. Despite excitement surrounding AI, independent testing of the technology is in its infancy. Early studies suggest programs like ChatGPT can ace high-level medical exams, but often stumble when interacting with humans. A 1,300-person participant study by Oxford University recently found that people using AI chatbots to research hypothetical health conditions didn't make better decisions than people using online searches or personal judgment. AI chatbot presented with medical scenarios in a comprehensive written form correctly identified the underlying condition 95% of the time. That was not the problem, said lead author Adam Mahdi of the Oxford Internet Institute. The place where things fell apart was during the interaction with the real participants. Mahdi and his team found several communication problems. People often didn't give the chatbots the necessary information to correctly identify the health issue. Conversely, the AI systems often responded with a combination of good and bad information, and users had trouble distinguishing between the two. The study, which was conducted in 2024, did not use the latest chatbot versions, including new offerings like ChatGPT Health. And a second AI opinion can help. The ability for chatbots to ask follow-up questions and elicit key details from users is one area where Wachter sees room for improvement. I think that's when this will get really good, when the tools become a little bit more doctorish in the way they go back and forth with patients. For now, one way to feel more confident about the information you're getting is to consult multiple chatbots, similar to getting a second opinion from another doctor. I will sometimes put information into ChatGPT and information into Gemini, he said, referring Google's AI tool. And when they both agree, I feel a little bit more secure, and that's the right answer.
Thank you. And we're going to move now to city and region. Highmark's local bank is back in the black after years of losses, and this is from John Harris. After 4 consecutive years of financial losses, Western New York's largest health plan is back in the black. Highmark Western and Northeastern New York, the local affiliate of the Pittsburgh Bank Highmark Health, on Monday reported a net income of $101 million on revenue of $3.1 billion in 2025. The local Highmark, which has 1,450 employees who live in New York State, reported a net loss of $150 million in 2024. This followed net losses of $21 million in 2023, $61 million in 2022, and $58 million in 2021. The loss in 2021 was a health plan's first loss in 6 years. It marks a pivotal year for us. Jessica Cox, president of Highmark Western and Northeastern New York, said of the insurer's 2025 results. Key to the turnaround was managing members' health care costs and tightening administrative expenses. The local Highmark affiliate lowered its operating expenses by $48 million in 2025 due to shared resources and contracts with Highmark Health. Health Now New York completed its affiliation with Highmark about 5 years ago. Cox also pointed to a strong investment market, as well as a one-time risk adjustment payment of $45 million in its small group portfolio as reasons behind the strong results in 2025. There are still plenty of challenges ahead that could test the insurer's long-term stability. For one, Highmark's spending on prescription drugs hit $464 million last year, a nearly 19% increase from 2024. Cox noted that Highmark is working on prescription drug affordability through several initiatives, such as how Highmark members are connected to lower-cost generics and biosimilars from Civica Script, a generic drug company Highmark helped establish through technology platform Free Market Health, which matches specialty medication referrals in pharmacies while balancing cost. In 2025, 90 cents of every premium dollar that the local Highmark received, a total of $2.7 billion, went toward paying doctors, hospitals, and other healthcare providers. For the first time in several years, Cox noted that Highmark saw a large increase in inpatient costs. For many years, outpatient costs had been increasing more than inpatient expenses as more healthcare services across the country transitioned out of the hospital into community settings. But last year, Highmark saw increased inpatient spending, which Cox partly attributed to more advanced medical record systems and technology with providers. The net income reported in 2025 increased Highmark's state-mandated reserves, which now stand at $618 million. Those reserves by law are withheld from operations and reinvested so they can remain available should a community health emergency such as a pandemic arise. While 2025 was solid, Cox said there are still plenty of headwinds in the industry, and a goal is long-term stability. This is about the long-term game and ensuring that we don't have to look to any volatility over a long period of time, Cox said, but ensure that we can reinvest by bringing consumers the very best products and best type of programs possible to bring them stability and access, and really the best experience possible as a customer. Cox mentioned Highmark's recent collaboration with preventative health platform Noom, which many Highmark members are become eligible to use on January 1st. That is something the Highmark enterprise overall was able to bring to fruition, and has probably been a program that we would not have had the bandwidth to be able to do previous to this affiliation, Cox said. Highmark Western and Northeastern New York has 361,000 fully insured members and 505,000 members overall. This includes members covered through employers that self-insure or have other funding arrangements. In addition, the health plan also provides services for Blue Card members as well as members through its third-party administration. Last year, the health plan reported membership fluctuations largely driven by shifts in the commercial group as well as Medicare Advantage. It saw a 10% growth in its federal markets products and retention and growth in its small group products. Despite the lower operating expenses, Highmark said it brought on more than 100 new local hires in 2025, and Highmark in mid-2024 moved into the top 5 floors of Seneca One in downtown Buffalo after relocating from its longtime office building on West Genesee Street.
Okay, and just a heads up, crude oil prices have jumped.
Uh-oh.
Oil prices rose sharply on Monday as disruptions to tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz raised uncertainty about how U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran would affect supplies to the world economy. U.S. oil traded 5.4% higher at $70.62 a barrel in early afternoon trading, and natural gas rose 2.6% to $2.93 per 1,000 cubic feet. Higher oil prices raised the prospect of costlier gas for U.S. drivers, as well as increased prices for other goods at a time when people in many countries have been stung by inflation. A key focus was the Strait of Hormuz at the southern end of the Persian Gulf, through which 20% of the world's oil supply passes. Tanker traffic dropped sharply as satellite navigation systems were disrupted, data analytics firm Kipler said on X. And as part of a newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, you can call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Marianne Broderick, nee Kowecki. Robert Edward Dominski, known as Bob. Lynn S. Green. Eileen Levine, nee Pitterman. And Marianne Poussatier. Again, if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555.
Thank you. For a little entertainment from the Royal Stars with Georgia Nichols. Happy birthday for Tuesday, March 3rd of 2026. Despite your confidence and direct manner, you are deeply sensitive. You adopt a brisk, no-nonsense approach to hide your compassionate empathy. This is a year of learning and teaching. Take time to renew your spiritual and religious beliefs. And then the stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. And it's looking like pretty much everybody's going to have a positive to average day. Aries, which is 3 stars. Be patient with co-workers as well as people who might be assisting you in health matters. Likewise, be patient with issues relating to a pet because today's full moon can trigger emotional arguments. Tonight, listen carefully. Taurus is 4 stars. Despite the intense full moon energy today, it's a lovely day to socialize and enjoy the company of friends, groups, and organizations. Tonight, relax. Gemini is 3 stars. Today you might feel caught between the demands of home and family versus the demands of your external world. You will have to make a choice tonight. Cocoon. Well, I guess that solves that one.
That makes it easy.
Cancer, 4 stars. Pay attention to everything you say and do because this is a mildly accident-prone day due to the full moon energy. Tonight, be reasonable. Drive carefully out there. Leo, 3 stars. Financial matters are tricky today because although you have money-making ideas or an opportunity to boost your income, pressure from the government, another party, or your partner might be hard to deal with. Tonight, check your belongings. Virgo, 4 stars. Today, the full moon is in your sign, which can create a bit of angst within you. This might not happen, but it could. Tonight, you hold all the cards. Libra, 3 stars. You're a people pleaser at heart and you like to avoid arguments. However, today, conflict might arise with coworkers, issues about pets, medical matters, or something related to hygiene and wellness. Tonight, enjoy solitude. Scorpio, 4 stars. Do what you can to keep the peace today when dealing with your kids or romantic partners. Today's full moon energy might make you come on too strong. Lighten up. Tonight, friendships. Sagittarius, 3 stars. You're high vis today, which means people notice you more than usual. However, because of the full moon, it means people will notice a public argument or any kind of strong emotion. Tonight, be modest. Capricorn, 4 stars. Steer clear of touchy, controversial subjects today. They can quickly become an argument which will be overblown in something you might later regret. Tonight, listen and learn. Aquarius, 3 stars. Don't make a big deal out of financial issues or squabbles about responsibilities or shared property or something you borrowed or lent. Why bother? Tonight, check your finances. And finally, Pisces is 4 stars. Tonight's full moon is opposite your sign, creating tension with those who are closest to you, especially spouses and partners. Tonight, cooperate. Mm-hmm. So
you are listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for March 3rd on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today are
JJ Tech
and Lita.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Lita.
and JJ Patek, and we will go to local news. SPECT investigative reporter at Channel 2 departs. This is from Alan Pergament. Award-winning investigative journalist Charlie Specht has left WGRZ-TV, Channel 2, less than 2 years after he joined the NBC affiliate. Channel 2 general manager Mark Manders could not be reached for comment. Specht, who previously worked at WKBW-TV at Channel 7 and the Buffalo News, said he planned to become an independent investigative reporter, teach at his alma mater, which is St. Bonaventure University, and complete a book he's writing about leaving the Catholic faith after his award-winning reports on the sexual abuse cases involving the Buffalo Diocese. He recently paused a column he posted on Substack, Buffalo Muckraker, while negotiating to get out of his Channel 2 contract, which had more than a year to run. He plans to restart the column under a new title, Charlie Specht, Independent Journalist. I really believe the future of investigative journalism is less to corporate media and more in independent media platforms, Specht said. I want to give it a shot. If anyone in this town can make it work, it is me. It's a little scary, but I've been encouraged by the response I've gotten so far. Specht's status at Channel 2 recently attracted attention when he didn't report on the latest news last week surrounding the investigation of Daniel D.J. Granville, the Erie County Office Chief of Narcotics, whose county-owned pickup crashed into 7 parked vehicles in April of 2024. Before last week, Specht and Sean Mickey, who formerly worked at Channel 7, had extensively reported on the Granville story, which came to light in March of 2025. Specht had worked at 3 of the mainstream news outlets in western New York. He was a Buffalo News reporter for almost 3 years before leaving to work on the village of Williamsville. He returned to journalism by joining Channel 7 in 2016. He spent 5 years at Channel 7, rejoined the news for 3 years, and then joined Channel 2 in 2024. After this article was published online, Specht posted a story on his Substack explaining his decision. Going independent will allow me more flexibility so that I can spend more time with my family, which is important, especially since I spent a lot of my early years in the field chasing down stories at all hours. I really enjoyed working for Channel 2, but I'm at a point in my career where I'd like to build something of my own, he wrote. A Western New York native, Specht received national acclaim for his 2018 and 2019 reports on the sexual abuse accusations in the Buffalo Diocese. The most impressive award won by Specht and photojournalist Jeff Wick for their coverage on the crisis at the Buffalo Diocese that led to the departure of Bishop Richard J. Malone was a 2020 Alfred I. DuPont Columbia University Award. Besides teaching a course at St. Bonaventure in the fall, Specht will also be a professional in residence who will mentor students. His book, which will outline his path from a true believer to someone who isn't Catholic anymore, does not yet have a title or publisher.
And a Jamestown man gets 25 to life for killing his ex-girlfriend. A Jamestown man was sentenced Monday to 25 years to life in prison after he admitted in January to the 2023 shooting death of his former girlfriend, Kayla Hodgkin. Chautauqua County Court Judge David Foley imposed the sentence on Michael Burham, 37. Burham's sentence will run concurrently with the 25 to 50-year sentence he is already serving in Pennsylvania on kidnap and escape convictions. Burham admitted to breaking into Hodgkin's home and fatally shooting her while she slept, and while her 3 children were also in the house, according to a news release from Chautauqua County District Attorney Jason Schmidt. 2 months before her death, Hodgkin had accused Burham of forcibly raping her. Schmidt described Hodgkin's murder as an execution. Authorities considered Burham a suspect in Hodgkin's slaying, and while he was being sought, he kidnapped a Warren, PA couple and drove to South Carolina. He was taken into custody in South Carolina and brought back to Warren, where he escaped the Warren County Jail on the 6th of July back in 2023. Burham pled guilty to kidnapping and escape charges in Pennsylvania and was sentenced in January in 2024 in that case to 25 to 50 years in prison. He was charged with Hodgkin's murder in the summer of 2024. It wasn't clear on Monday where Burham will be incarcerated as he serves both sentences. As of Monday, he was being held in the Chautauqua County Jail, according to a court official. JJ?
We're going to read an article about warming weather. It wreaks havoc on sewer systems. This is from Mackenzie Schumann. Those who are yearning for springtime weather may have been happy to see temperatures rise above freezing in recent weeks, but the brief warm-ups carried a dirty side effect. As the snow melted in the region and saw some rainfall, lower sewer systems were overwhelmed. More than 35 million gallons of sewage overflowed into local waterways of sewage February 12th, according to data from New York Alert. The Buffalo Sewer Authority reported around 5.7 million gallons overflowed from sewers into its system, while Cheektowaga may have had more than 16 million gallons of sewage overflow beginning on February 12th, New York Alert data shows. The West Seneca sanitary sewer system had roughly 3.1 million gallons of sewage overflow. North Tonawanda, another 3 million gallons, and the city of Tonawanda, another 2.1 million gallons, according to the state data. The State Department of Environmental Conservation has attempted to crack down on municipalities for their sewage overflows, but the problem continues to plague western New York. Raw sewage and untreated stormwater flow into local creeks, rivers, and lakes. It isn't good for the environment. Rather, the pollution causes a multitude of water quality problems, including bacteria, algae blooms, foul odors, and aesthetic impacts, according to Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper. Cheektowaga, for one, is expected to invest more than $6 million in a sewer rehabilitation project as required by a 2015 consent order with the DEC. The state originally gave Cheektowaga a 10-year deadline to complete the work on the sewer system, but there have been multiple delays and difficulties with securing funding, according to reports by the Cheektowaga Bee. In Buffalo, work to reduce combined sewer overflows was supposed to be done in 2034, but the Buffalo Sewer Authority recently settled with the DEC to extend that timeline to 2040. The Sewer Authority expects to spend at least $1 billion on necessary upgrades to a system to stop sewage overflows. We did have overflows for much of the period, said Rosaline Noble, a principal sanitary engineer of Buffalo Sewer Authority. We also went into our wet weather mode at our treatment facility. That mode helps increase the amount of sewage that can flow into the Buffalo Sewer Authority's Bird Island wastewater treatment facility by splitting flows between physical treatment and biological treatment methods. While this means sewage doesn't go through both treatments, Noble said the water flowing out of the treatment facility is still cleaner than the Niagara River upstream of Bird Island. So how do we get to this great thaw happening in Buffalo? February weather was a near mirror image of how January's weather played out. While January started off warm and ended dangerously cold, February kept that cold pattern and transitioned to warm temperatures in the last 2 weeks. Sub-freezing temperatures kept a tight grip on Buffalo until February 10th, when the mercury rose to 44 degrees, according to data from the National Weather Service. On that day, there was about 15 inches of snow on the ground, according to measurements at the Buffalo Niagara Airport. Temperatures since then have remained above freezing, aside from February 12th, 13th, 24th, and 26th. Weather Data Service showed. Those warmer temperatures remained in the mid-30s into the 40s, caused nearly all the snow to completely melt away, and plus more than 0.6 inches of rain fell February 18th, adding even more water to an already soaked region. The warmer temperatures could continue. The Weather Service predicts that over the next first 2 weeks of March, western New York could see above average temperatures. This may be accompanied by above average precipitation, the agency predicted in a climate outlook published on February 26th. So there's the downside to the warm weather.
Yes, there is. But well, what are you going to do? Moving over to some development news, tax breaks clear way for apartments in Dunkirk. More than 3 years after first proposing a 78-unit affordable housing project in the city of Dunkirk, a downstate developer has been cleared to proceed with its new homesteads at Dunkirk Landing with the help of more than $4 million in tax breaks. Reagan Development Corporation, based in Ardsley, is buying and redeveloping 12 properties at 2 separate sites on Washington Avenue and East 4th Street, where it will demolish much of the existing structure before putting up 2 3-story apartment buildings for lower income and workforce housing. 10 of those parcels have been off the tax rolls or delinquent, and some are owned by the city, but all would eventually be subject to full taxes. The $38.2 million project will include 33 one-bedroom, 42 two-bedroom, and 3-bedroom apartments, plus community rooms, playgrounds, and outdoor recreational space at both sites, as well as a new 5,600 square foot commercial space for a daycare provider on East 4th Street. Reagan will tear down a dilapidated 37,237 square foot 3-story building located on 1.5 acres at 208 through 214 and 220 Washington. Reagan will then construct a 53,000, almost 54,000 square foot building with 48 units at 160 and 164 East 4th Street. The developer will demolish the 10,000 square foot western end of a shopping plaza, while the other 50,000 square feet that is owned by another entity will remain. At 41,600 square feet, building with 30 more units would then be erected on the 2.2 acre site along with the daycare center. That's a massive project.
Yeah.
The 2 sites will also be remediated under the state brownfield cleanup program, which will generate tax credits for the project. Both new buildings would also be fully electric and energy efficient, and each site would have a playground and outdoor recreational space. We know that new quality housing is sorely needed in Dunkirk and has been for some time, so we are anxious to get the shovels in the ground and make homesteads at Dunkirk Landings a reality, said Gabe Regan, development associate at the firm. The apartments will be aimed at household earnings between 40 to 80% of the area median income for the county, with 2 apartments set at 40% of AMI, 2 at 50%, 49 units at 60%, and 8 at 70%. Another 16 units of supportive housing will be set aside for homeless veterans at up to 30% of AMI, with funding from Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative and services provided by Soldier On. There would also be 1 superintendent's unit. Additionally, 11 units will be constructed as fully accessible and adapted for residents with mobility, hearing, or vision impairment. Reagan is spending $510,000 to acquire the property, which are owned by David Paradis, the Dunkirk Housing Authority, and 2 other agencies. Beside the tax break and credits, the project is also part of the city's $10 million Downtown Revitalization Initiative award from the state from 2023 and is benefiting from a county infrastructure grant through Empire State Development Corporation. In total, it's receiving $8.8 million through HCR and $26.2 million in grants and credits, with another $1 million from a bank loan and $2.2 million in developer equity. Work is expected to begin after a March 13th closing, starting with demolition and remediation, with completion by the end of November 2027. And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 13 minutes past the hour.
And we will now move on to, yay, sports. On Tage Tuesday, it is Vegas, baby. And this is from Mike Harrington. The TNT gold medal towels were already spread across seats awaiting the fans' arrival. So it didn't feel like a normal practice for the Buffalo Sabres on Monday morning. Coach Lindy Ruff was stoked, saying it gave a feeling of the day before the first playoff game, and this won't be a run-of-the-mill game for the Sabres on Tuesday night at the KeyBank Center. The contest against the Vegas Golden Knights was always filled with some extra oomph because the annual visit of former captain Jack Eichel will be the Sabres' first in front of their home fans in nearly a month. In that time, of course, their star center Tage Thompson took part in the life-altering victory at the Olympics in Italy for Team USA, which parlayed Jack Hughes' overtime goal in the gold medal game against Canada into American sports lore, and the first goal since the 1980 Miracle Team. The Sabres, like every NHL team, are honoring their Olympics medal winners in the pregame ceremonies. In this case, it will be Thompson and the USA head massage therapist Brett Crompton. But oh, how the hockey gods can be devious at times by making Vegas the opponent for this homecoming. Eichel, of course, gets roundly crushed with boos every time he touches the puck here since he was traded in 2021. Suffice to say, if you need an explanation of why, you're probably reading the wrong section. Thompson was treated like one of their own hero last week in New Jersey when Hughes brought him to center ice to be part of the homecoming. That reception might not be in the card for Eichel, of course, but Thompson was asked point blank Monday if he wanted to include Eichel and Vegas teammate Noah Hanifin in the ceremony, knowing what the reaction might be. No hesitation. Of course, Thompson said. I would hope there would be a positive reaction. I think we did something great for this country. I know he gave everything he had to his organization when he was here. Obviously, it didn't end the way anybody wanted it to. But with that being said, he put everything he had into the city. He put everything he had into that USA team, and he wore the crest proudly. So I would hope that if it's a really good reaction for him and Noah both. Vegas coach Bruce Cassidy said his team already went through some of this earlier this season when Mitch Marner returned to Toronto for the first time, but Cassidy said he was hopeful Buffalo fans might allow bygones to be bygones in this case. It would be nice, Cassidy said. Fans can react, however, that's their business, but sometimes you've got to move on, and maybe now's the time. He won a gold medal for his country, and he as good a time as any to give him a hand. Eichel, like most of his teammates, did not take part in his team's optional practice and thus did not speak Monday. The Golden Knights are 1-2 since the break and got clubbed 5-0 Sunday in Pittsburgh. Captain Mark Stone is day-to-day after suffering an upper body injury in that one, and Eichel has no points and a -4 rating in his 2 post-Olympic appearances. It's not likely Sabres fans are going to move on from their Eichel rage. That unfortunate post-game diss of their fans after the first game here in 2022, which it should be noted was about a 5-second clip to start a 5-minute interview, is not something you can come back from. The hope here is Eichel and Hanifin can get some good applause combined with a rousing ovation Thompson is sure to get. If you had any of the urge to go back to booing Eichel once the game starts, have at it. The Sabres are looking forward to whatever noise the anticipated sellout crowd can provide. It should be raucous. In the ring, seeing the towels, you know it's going to be nuts in here, said Captain Rasmus Dahlin. I hope we're going to see a little bit of what it was like back in the day when it was not so. I'm fired up. I can't wait. Thompson said he was looking forward to the kind of outrageous atmosphere he has seen here once in a while, and what the team will likely get the rest of this season in the midst of this incredible run to the playoffs. I am excited to see those towels being waved tomorrow, Thompson said. The place will be rocking. The boys are playing good hockey, and I think everybody is excited. We've got to continue to keep winning, but sometimes some things that gives us a lot of energy. It's a difference maker for sure. It was pretty cool to watch Eichel feeding Thompson for one-timers on the USA power play in Italy. Thompson, remember, was only an up-and-comer when Eichel was still here, not yet scoring even 10 goals in a season. Quite a difference now. Ikes is one of the guys that, when I was first here, I looked up to, Thompson said, an obviously unbelievable player. Someone I always tried to emulate of my parts of my game after him was just being a big, strong power forward. He's got a ton of skill. He skates really well. I just try to watch him on and off the ice, the things he would do, and try to emulate him a little bit and learn from him. So it was cool going to the Olympics and going full circle playing with him there. The Sabres seem to be coming full circle too. Saturday's 6-2 waxing of the Tampa Bay Lightning was perhaps the biggest eye-opener of this incredible 24-5-2 run that has resuscitated the city's hockey allegiance. I think we've proven not only that we can make playoffs, but that we can be a real team, Thompson said. Everyone in that locker room believes that we're a dangerous team, and I kind of think that's just where we're at right now. We have that self-belief that we can do something special this year. Thompson, who is tied for 8th in the NHL with 32 goals, has already had one incredibly special moment that he'll be fated for Tuesday night. It's going to be wild to see how far he and his teammates can carry their momentum as we head through the spring.
And it has been a run, I'll say that.
Yep.
And the question is, will Buffalo Bills continue to pay the price for a premium center like McGovern? Part of a general manager's job is to prepare his fan base for bad news. Eric DeCosta, the man in charge of the Baltimore Ravens roster, got ahead of any possible criticism last week at the NFL Scouting Combine when he told reporters he offered center Tyler Linderbaum a market-setting contract to return in 2026. We've got some work to do on Tyler Linderbaum's contract, DeCosta said it from the podium. No one should doubt DeCosta. Linderbaum is one of the best in the NFL at his position, and the Ravens should do everything to keep their quarterback, Lamar Jackson, happy. But the comment came across as a warning to fans that Linderbaum may sign elsewhere when the market officially opens at 4 p.m. on the 11th of March. How does this affect the Buffalo Bills? If another team beats DeCosta's offer, then the price for Bills center Connor McGovern may rise as the negotiating window opens. The Kansas City Chiefs' Creed Humphrey is the NFL's highest-paid center with a $72 million contract that included $35 million in guarantees and an $18 million average annual value, according to Over the Cap. Sport Track projects McGovern to receive a contract with an approximate value of $16 million per year. He is among the best centers in the NFL, despite having played through injuries in 2025, and he is just 28 years old. The Bills want to retain McGovern and left guard David Edwards, but they're prepared to lose both in free agency. Though General Manager and President of Football Operations Brandon Beane will restructure several contracts to create ample cap space, he would have trouble matching an offer close to $20 million if Linderbaum's deal drives up the price. McGovern would be a significant loss. Josh Allen would need to build chemistry with a new center during training camp. The center-quarterback exchange was a talking point 2 years ago when McGovern moved from guard to center. McGovern and Edwards are also outstanding at helping Allen and other offensive linemen before the snap. If Edwards and or McGovern depart, the Bills aren't going to simply hand the starting job to Alec Anderson and Cedric Van Pran Granger. Beane is leaning on his pro scouts to find veterans who can flourish in Joe Brady's scheme and under the guidance of offensive line coach Pat Meyer. At center, the Bills could buy low on former Tennessee Titans center Lyde Cushenberry, who started on the LSU National Championship team Brady coached as passing game coordinator. Injuries limited Cushenberry to 8 games in 2 of the past 3 seasons, but he started 17 games for Sean Payton and the Broncos in 2023. Former Washington Commander center Tyler Biedzas may also fit. He played at Wisconsin as Bills defensive coordinator Jim Leonard began his coaching career with the Badgers. Every conversation at the Combine matters to Brady, but the Bills' new head coach did not need to speak to a prospect to gauge whether they'd fit in his locker room. I watch how guys walk with their groups at the Combine, Brady said at the Combine in Indianapolis. Who's the guy that on his phone just sitting in the back? Who's the guy that's kind of hyping his boys while they're running the 40? All those things are important. The Bills have an excellent scouting staff that can identify talent in every round. There are ways to evaluate a prospect's character without a coach or general manager in the room, but none of the draft decision makers know the team's locker room better than Beane and Brady. Beane quizzed the top wide receiver prospects during interviews. He asked questions to learn more about each player's background and their reasons for pursuing football as a career. The Combine is one small piece to the puzzle. The Bills scouts have followed these players closely for months, if not years. They already talked to some of All-Star games, such as the Senior Bowl, though the event occurred during the same week in which Brady's hiring became official. But this draft is too important to the Bills for the head coach and general manager to follow along from afar, as the Jacksonville Jaguars chose to do following their encouraging season under first-year coach Liam Cohen. Other observations from Indy? It seems unlikely the Bills would part ways with tight end Dawson Knox because of his cap hit. They have Dalton Kincaid and Jackson Hawes, but Knox is an every down player who's a strong blocker. Kincaid's health will also factor into the decision. The contract should not be difficult to restructure, and it is best for both sides if Knox stays. Do not be surprised if the Bills use one of their 7th-round draft picks on a punter. They do not have one under contract for 2025, and they went through 3 seasons, remember, being used a 6th-rounder on punter Matt Araiza in 2022. Don't count on the Miami Dolphins to trade wide receiver Jalen Waddle. John Eric Sullivan, their new general manager, intends to listen to offers on every player, but he's not interested in stripping the roster down to the studs. It looks as though 2026 will be a reset year in Miami while the team deals with the salary cap challenge created by moving on from Tyreek Hill and eventually quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Sullivan and Dolphins first-year coach Jeff Hafley were in Green Bay with arguably the best free agent quarterback Malik Willis. But does it make sense for a rebuilding team to spend big money on the position when the 2027 draft class is loaded with talent prospects like Arch Manning? The New England Patriots, meanwhile, may not be able to re-sign talent nose tackle Khyiris Tonga, who would fit perfectly in the Bills' new defense. The Patriots have money to spend, but they need to fortify their offensive line and add another wide receiver. New England is the most likely destination if Philadelphia decides to trade receiver A.J. Brown, because Brown played for Patriots coach Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. Elsewhere in the AFC East, New York Jets coach Aaron Glenn is going to take over defensive play calling in his 2nd season. Glenn called play calling his superpower, which isn't a leap considering the success he had as a coordinator in Detroit. It's safe to assume the Jets will be taking a defensive player, Ohio State edge rusher Arvell Reese, with the 2nd pick in the NFL draft. The Jets are going to stink again, though. There's not enough talent on the roster, and they don't know who will play quarterback for their new offensive coordinator, Frank Reich. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to sign or draft an explosive running back, whether that's handing a lucrative contract to the Seahawks' Kenneth Walker III, or selecting Notre Dame's Jeremiah Love with the 9th pick in the 1st round. Is the Chiefs' receiving corps strong enough? Though Rashee Rice is not a number 1 option, and signing Hill isn't going to save the day. There are more holes on their roster than you may expect. The dynamic in Baltimore is strange. Rather than promoting quarterback coach T. Martin to offensive coordinator, the Ravens hired an unproven first-time play caller, Declan Doyle, who's 27. How did Jackson react to that news? He was one of multiple players involved in head coaching interviews, but they chose a defensive-minded candidate in Jesse Minter. The team's last contract negotiation with Jackson got ugly. The Ravens have never gotten him a number 1 receiver. The marriage does not seem destined to last long. The free agent safeties may not get as much money as they wanted because this draft is filled with talented prospects at the position. Oregon's Dylan Thieneman may be a top 15 pick following his combine workout. Names you should know for the Bills: Trayden Stukes from Arizona, Jalen Kilgore from South Carolina, Bud Clark from TCU, and V.J. Payne from Kansas City. 2 other AFC contenders, the LA Chargers and Denver Broncos, are also making significant schematic changes this offseason. The Chargers hired former Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel as offensive coordinator. Bill Walsh couldn't have success with LA interior offensive line, and Payton has relinquished most play-calling duties in Denver to former Bills quarterback Davis Webb. Payton also parted ways with a few experienced assistants, and there will be turnover on both sides of the ball. The Bills aren't the only AFC contender looking for a receiver. Denver, New England, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore need to add talent at the position. The top free agents, Indianapolis's Alec Pierce, is expected to stay with the Colts. Cincinnati, meanwhile, is likely going to keep adding to its front seven and secondary on defense. Former University at Buffalo running back Mike Washington Jr.'s ascent continues in Indy, where he led every player at his position with a 4.33 second 40-yard dash. Washington broke down in tears when he realized how fast he ran. His 10-yard split was also the best in the class. His vertical and broad jumps were second best, and Washington, who transferred from UB to New Mexico State to Arkansas, has a breakout season in 2025 with over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns for the Razorbacks. Now he may be a second or third round draft pick. Texas Tech linebacker Jacob Rodriguez started his college career as a quarterback at the University of Virginia and developed into one of the best defensive players in the country, finishing 5th in voting for the Heisman Trophy. Rodriguez's workout in Indy all but guaranteed he will be a second-round draft pick. He would fit nicely in the Bills' 3-4 defense, and he models his game after 2 of their linebackers, Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano. South Dakota State quarterback Cole Payton turned heads last week in Indianapolis with his workout and testing results, including a 4.56 second 40-yard dash, and Payton is competing with Carson Beck of Miami, Garrett Nussmeier from LSU, and Drew Allar from Penn State to be the third quarterback taken. Payton is arguably the most intriguing of the bunch, though, and based on his playing style, no one should be surprised Josh Allen is his favorite NFL player to watch. It's still too soon for the Bills to use a draft pick on a young quarterback, but would they consider trading for someone to be Allen's backup rather than re-signing Mitch Trubisky? Tennessee Titans quarterback Will Levis, for example, is an intriguing buy low candidate who has worked extensively with Allen's offseason position coach Jordan Palmer and spent a season at Penn State with Bills assistant quarterback coach Tracy McSorley. Palmer insists Levis is going to flourish when he's healthy and given an opportunity. Yeah. And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 31 minutes past the hour.
And we'll read one more sports story, at least. NFL draft prospects turn the tables and comment on Bills' new assistants. And this is also from Lance Lazowski. Are Mason Thomas one of the best edge rushers in the 2026 NFL draft? Smiled and let out a chuckle when a reporter asked the Oklahoma prospect about the Buffalo Bills cornerback coach Jay Valai. He always believed in me as a freshman, said Thomas, who has yet to meet the Bills in Indianapolis. If he were on his podium here, he'll tell you, I believe in him. He told me from the beginning, you're going to be special, and then it ended up happening. Yeah, he's funny. Thinking about him, I'm laughing right now. Thomas is one of several prospects in his draft who was coached in college by a member of Joe Brady's first Bills coaching staff. Valai, the Sooners' co-defensive coordinator and cornerbacks coach for the past 4 seasons, may be the most intriguing of the group. He's a former Wisconsin cornerback, Bills defensive coordinator Jim Leonard's alma mater, and quickly rose up through the ranks with stops at Georgia, Rutgers, Texas, Alabama, and Oklahoma. In Buffalo, he will be responsible for guiding Chris Benford and Maxwell Hairston, among others. Brady wanted a blend of experienced and up-and-coming coaches. Both groups need to be able to teach the 3 and 4 base defense and company techniques that Leonard will want from the Bills in 2026. Valai was not in Thomas's position meetings at Oklahoma, but the young assistant made a strong impression on the Sooners' defense. He'd always say that's something that you needed to write down, Thomas said, like, you need to write this down. It helps you play fast. That's why he developed the 2 freshman All-Americans. When I heard the news, I was sad, but I guess he left when I left. So, shoot, I guess I'm not that sad. Oklahoma had a freshman All-American in consecutive seasons with cornerback Cortland Guillory getting the nod in 2025. Guillory, ranked by ESPN as a 3-star recruit, started 11 games for a defense that allowed the 7th fewest points at 15.5 and the 6th fewest yards at 272.5 per game. The Sooners gave Valai a raise this offseason to try to retain him, but the Bills called to offer a spot on Leonard's staff. The Sooners safety Brandon Spears-Jennings, who started 23 games across the past 2 seasons, met informally with Valai and the Bills in Indianapolis. Valai wasn't the only position coach to help Spears-Jennings earn an invite to the Combine and a spot on the NFL, but the impact was significant. He helped me so much on and off the field, Spears Jennings said. We had so many real conversations and good talks. On the field, he helped me prepare for games. Him and safeties coach Brandon Hall got my footwork right and just a different type of mindset. I'm happy for him. He always said he wanted to be in the NFL coaching. He's got the job, and I know he's going to run away with it and take it as far as he can. It's no secret the Bills need an edge rusher in this draft. Joey Bosa and A.J. Epinesa are free agents. Landon Jackson and Michael Helks are still recovering from injuries at the end of their 2025 season. Illinois' Gabe Jacas played for the Bills defense line coach Terrence Jamison. Jacas was a standout at the Senior Bowl, and his performance during the combine workouts may vault him into the first round consideration. The Bills had not yet met with Jacas as of Wednesday morning, though. Perhaps he's not the type of rusher they want to add to this offseason, but the draft does not begin for another 2 months, and they have enough intel on Jacas as a person. Jacas led the Big Ten with 11 sacks, sixth most in the country, and he forced 3 fumbles in 2025. His head coach at Illinois, Brett Bielema, overlapped with Leonard at Wisconsin during the safety senior year in 2004, and Leonard also spent 1 season as a senior football analyst at Illinois in 2023 before he joined the Denver Broncos as pass game coordinator. Jacas' skills may not be what the Buffalo Bills need, but he would understand the technique and principles that the Bills will use under Leonard and Jamison. Coach Jamison was a very detail-oriented coach, Jacas said. He's very detail-oriented, and he's a very good teacher. He had Johnny Newton, Keith Randolph. Those guys are good technicians, and that's something he taught me, detail with my hands and footwork. Bills outside linebackers coach Bobby April III spent the past 3 seasons at Stanford, the school's defensive coordinator. He worked under Rex Ryan in Buffalo in 2015 and 16, and joined Leonhardt at Wisconsin where April held the title of co-defensive coordinator, and Stanford had 1 defensive player at the combine, cornerback Colin Wright, who transitioned from safety and can play multiple spots in secondary. Wright started 32 games into the past 3 seasons, totaling 139 tackles with 5 interceptions and 14 pass breakups. ESPN's Mel Kiper Jr. ranked Wright as a top 15 cornerback this draft class, a slot that may be too high for the Bills to take someone at the position. April, who will help players such as Greg Rousseau transition from the 3 and 4 base defense, left a strong impression on Wright. April is an awesome coach, Wright said. He's a player's coach. He allows feedback. He gives us a lot of feedback, and I think we had a standard on the way he wants to play defense. We just did a lot as a defense. We ran a lot of different coverages. He honed in on everybody's specific talents, not just plug-and-play people. He really valued everybody's talents. Being able to play everything, we obviously had a lot of coaches who played the NFL, so they had NFL backgrounds. They put me in those same positions. They kind of made us learn how to be pros.
Yes. And let's move over to Dear Eric.
Dear Al.
Dear Eric, I have been with my husband for almost 35 years. We both have been married and divorced once, but there have been 3 of us in this marriage: my husband, myself, and his mother. She has always treated me poorly, and he has always defended her. She has bullied me over and over again. She fully believes that she is supposed to be everyone's priority and get her way immediately, automatic compliance. If you tell her no, you will be unleashed on with such fury. My husband defends almost all of this. He tells me I am the problem, not her and her behavior, because I try to stand up to her and have a problem with what she does. He says I shouldn't care how she treats me because she is so virtuous and she always does the right thing. She has never once apologized for her incredibly selfish behavior or her vicious mouth. She has screamed at me and tells me I am just too sensitive. I am beyond sick of it. He needs to be married to her, not me. Aside from all of this, with her, he is a very kind man, a wonderful stepdad to my sons, and a loving grandfather. I'm just sick of the denial of my very bad experience with his mother and the endless idealization and idolizing. The resentment is enormous. We have been to marriage counseling because we have some of the same behaviors toward me, and I was on the brink and wanted out. What do I do? Signed, In-Law Agony.
Yeah.
Dear in-law, This kind of treatment is unacceptable. I'm sorry you've gone through this. You write that he has some of the same behaviors toward you. Your relationship with your mother-in-law may be beyond salvaging, and the best course of action may be to put as much distance between you and her as you can. But your marriage should be healthy and communicative. Those behaviors you mentioned are neither, and it's concerning. I'm curious about what happens if you make the subject of his mother something that neither of you discuss. Without needing to defend her, can he see and address his side of the street in counseling? Can you adjust his behavior toward you? From what you've written, you don't seem to be asking him to choose sides. You're asking him to acknowledge feelings and that you deserve to be treated with respect. If he doesn't think you deserve respect, how can he show up for your marriage? You don't have to like his mother. You don't have to fully understand their connection, unhealthy though it may be. But he needs to respect you. Make that non-negotiable in counseling. Dear Eric, I socialize with a group that includes an extreme extrovert. She dominates the conversation. Nice person, but she never shuts up. She talks 95% of the time, and the rest of us get 1% each. She goes into long-winded stories about people we don't know. Age, cognitive decline is not the issue. How would you kindly let her know she needs to develop listening skills, as they are also part of conversation? Signed, Talked Out. Dear Talked, try setting up group agreements for conversation, like a conversation prompt that each person gets to answer, or even bringing a timer to lunch so that everyone is assured a space in the conversation. The key is to make these decisions at the group level so that everyone, including your extroverted friend, buys into the effort. Dear Eric, the letter writer, feeling guilty, wrote about being financially strapped after cancer treatments and unable to tell their daughters. There are many financial assistance programs for her cancer treatment. For instance, the Susan G. Komen Foundation has $500 grants to help with everyday costs, including gas and utilities. Additionally, there are volunteers available to drive her to her treatments through the American Cancer Society. All cancer centers have nurse navigators who assist with appointments, financial assistance, and other complementary treatments. Many patients do not know about this service, and I hope this helps. Signed, Help Available. Dear Help, thank you very much for sharing these resources. The stress of medical treatment and recovery can be made so much worse by financial stress. JJ?
Thank you. From Buffalo Next, a story about manufacturing by Matt Glynn. Hochul promises to pursue tariff refunds for Americans. Gee, I hope so.
Yeah, right.
Governor Kathy Hochul says New York State businesses and residents deserve tariff refunds after the Supreme Court struck down President Trump's far-reaching tariff program last month. I want the money back, Hochul said during an appearance Monday in Amherst. It belongs to the American people, and we will pursue all means necessary, including going to court. Hochul's administration, citing estimates by the Yale Budget Lab, said the average New York State household has faced $1,751 in additional costs due to tariffs over the past year, for a total statewide impact of $13.5 billion. Analysts follow the tariffs case said it may take years to obtain those refunds if they ever come. Complicating the picture is that some companies have absorbed the cost of the tariffs, while others have passed them to procedures whether you normally would drop. Okay, am I in the right place? No, I'm not. Where did I go? Oh, B2. I'm in the wrong place. I'm sorry. But pass them along to customers, still others have used a combination of the two approaches. Even now, the tariff situation remains muddled. Trump responded to the Supreme Court's ruling by imposing a 10% global tariff that by law can stay in effect for 150 days. In the midst of the tariff turmoil, small businesses are trying to make decisions about investments and staffing. The biggest problem is the chaos, confusion, and uncertainty, said Jim Bittner, owner of Bittner Singer Orchards in Appleton, who was part of a roundtable discussion at the Amherst Chamber of Commerce. As a fruit farmer, Bittner said he needs to decide 4 years ahead of time about what types of trees to plant, such as peaches, cherries, or apples. With what's going on, that makes the decision process even more difficult, he said. Bittner Singer Orchards relies on potassium fertilizers imported from Canada. Those prices have gone up around 30% in the last year, Bittner said. Specialty tractors the business uses come from Europe and Asia, and prices for those tractor parts have gone up 50% in the past year. Christian Johnson's business, Beautiful Brains, makes sustainable products, including biodegradable nitrile gloves. As a small business, the price volatility triggered by tariffs hits hard, she said. We don't purchase at scale like our large multinational distributor competitors, or so oftentimes we're caught in contracts where we can't change our price, said Johnson, the owner and founder, so our margin just diminishes, which could easily put us out of business at a point because we can't really adjust our cost. It really weakens our competitiveness and the ability to participate in government procurement or even large organizational contracts. AirStep, a maker of oxygen systems, laid off 5 employees last week due to a drop in sales. Sales manager Angelo Barbaric said the business has about 50 employees. Barbaric said the tariffs have taken a toll on AirStep's exports to Asia, where reciprocal tariffs are hammering distributors. Any profit that they were expecting has been wiped out, he said. In the last year, they've been spooked, so they no longer are purchasing AirStep equipment and are going to other manufacturers, whether they're from Asia or the Middle East or wherever they're manufacturing these products. AirStep also feels the effect of tariffs on component imports, he said. That's definitely affected our business and our manufacturing capabilities here at AirStep in Amherst. Top Seeds, a specialty cracker maker and past 43 North champion, buys ingredients from American companies that import them from around the world. They've passed that price on to us, for the tariffs have been set on these products, said Rebecca Brady, the CEO. We have absorbed that cost, so our margins have decreased. Top Seeds was exploring expanding sales of its crackers to airlines for passengers to enjoy, but with uncertainty over the cost of the equipment associated with that project, the company has put that idea on hold, Brady said. A survey conducted in late December by the Buffalo Niagara Manufacturing Alliance found that a majority of Western New York manufacturers felt the tariffs had hurt their business. 65% of respondents said the tariffs had affected their business either somewhat or very negatively. 16% cited no impact, while 19% of the tariffs had affected them either somewhat or very positively. I don't know how that happens.
Well, let's swing back to Buffalo, because there's a great project going on in the city also. $175 million will revamp the former Kensington Heights. Affordable housing complex will include childcare even. A pair of affordable housing development plans to redevelop the former Kensington Heights public housing property on the east side into a 304-unit affordable housing complex. Belmont Housing Resource for Western New York is working with CB Emmanuel Realty on a $175 million proposal to transform the vacant 17-acre site, which is owned by ECMC Corporation and located next to the hospital. Plans for the rebranded Glenville Heights include recreational space and a neighborhood clubhouse, in addition to the apartments, a child care center, and 10,000 square feet of commercial space. It will include a mixture of multi-story apartment buildings, 36 townhomes, and a 44-unit senior housing building. The apartments will be considered workforce housing, aimed at households and families earning no more than 50 to 60% of the area median income. The carbon-neutral project will feature an all-electric design with integrated solar power. That's cool. This site represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to redevelop more than 15 acres in an established neighborhood on the east side of Buffalo, Belmont President and CEO Brad Packard said. Glenville Heights will bring much-needed affordable housing and meaningful community amenities to the residents of the Delavan Grider community and East Buffalo, said Ben Upshaw, managing partner of CB Emmanuel. We anticipate a highly successful project. located at 1827 Fillmore Avenue, Kensington Heights, was acquired in 2018 by ECMC, which finished demolishing and clearing the site a year later before completing an environmental remediation under the state brownfield cleanup program in preparation for redevelopment. ECMC chose Belmont and CB Emanuel as developers in 2023. Belmont and CB Emanuel have spent several years working with ECMC and refining their plans. They are finalizing their application to the New York State Housing Finance Agency for low-income housing tax credits and bonds, which will comprise the primary funding for the project. Officials hope to close on construction financing by year's end. They intend to acquire the property through a joint venture before kicking off their project, which will occupy 15 acres of the site, leaving a 2-acre corner piece along the Kensington and Fillmore for future development. Pike Construction Services would start work in early 2027 with a 2-year time frame for completion. The first units are anticipated to be ready for lease in early 2029. According to plans for HHL Architects and Engineers at Wendell Companies, the project entails a series of new streets carved into the vacant grass-covered site, including Glenny Drive that will provide access off Fillmore by extending eastward toward the ECMC campus. Limestone East and Limestone West will then extend northward into the property, intersected by a new Glenview Avenue before coming around in a bend called Limestone Court. The development itself will consist of an L-shaped 5-story building dubbed Glenview Commons at the southwest edge of the site at the corner of Fillmore and Glenny Drive. 2 rectangular 4-story buildings called Glenview Towers, arrayed north to south and perpendicular to Glenny, and on the other side of Limestone West with a driveway and parking between them at the southeastern edge of the site at the corner of Glenny and Limestone East. A 4-story senior apartment building just to the north of the 2 Glenview Tower buildings, separated by Glenview Avenue with the community building at the west. And lastly, a series of 8 townhome buildings at the northern end, including 6 4-unit buildings and 2 6-unit buildings.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, Army soldiers recognized with a Medal of Honor. This is Washington News by Bill Barrow and Seung Min Kim for the Associated Press. President Trump recognized 3 U.S. Army soldiers with the Medal of Honor at the White House on Monday, with 2 of the commendations awarded posthumously. Retired Command Sergeant Major Terry P. Richardson was recognized for actions during the Vietnam War that were credited with saving the lives of 85 other service members. Staff Sergeant Michael H. Allis, who was killed in action in Afghanistan in 2013, was recognized for valor during the combat that resulted in his death. And Master Sergeant Roderick W. Edmonds, who died in 1985, was recognized for his leadership and resistance as a prisoner of war in Germany during World War II. There's no ceremony that can be more important than this, Trump said. The Republican president also used a ceremony to talk about his decision to launch a war in Iran, his immigration crackdown, expansion of the White House, and decor he's chosen at the Executive Mansion. At Iran, the president defended the preemptive action as necessary to block Tehran from rebuilding a nuclear program and becoming an intolerable threat to the Middle East, but also to the American people. The Medal of Honor is given by presidents in the name of Congress to recognize combat service that goes beyond the call of duty and risks one's own life. Richardson, on September 14th of 1968, Richardson was a staff sergeant on a reconnaissance mission as a platoon leader in the vicinity of Lac Ninh, part of the Republic of Vietnam. According to a citation, Richardson came under fire from the North Vietnamese Army, including heavy machine gun fire, as he rescued 3 wounded soldiers. After the rescues, he led his unit to hit its intended destination, a hilltop identified as a place to direct airstrikes. He found the location to be part of an enemy camp, but remained for at least 7 hours directing strikes even after being wounded by a sniper. Enemy forces eventually fled. Richardson, when found by other U.S. forces, declined medical evaluation so he could remain with his troops. His gallant and selfless actions on September 14th of 1968 spared the lives of 85 fellow soldiers, the White House said. Alice, as a staff sergeant at Forward Operating Base Ghazni, Alice was a skilled infantryman who led soldiers during an attack on the enemy base combatants on August 28th of 2013. Alice, 24 at the time, directed soldiers to a bunker before returning to the building where they had been to check on any more endangered people. According to a citation, he came upon a coalition forces officer from Poland. They moved toward combatants who breached the base perimeter and joined other coalition forces. During the fighting, one enemy combatant came upon Alice and the Polish officer. With complete disregard for his own safety, he positioned himself between the insurgent and the coalition forces officer who had been wounded and unable to walk. His commendation reads, Staff Sergeant Alice fired on the insurgent and incapacitated him, but as he approached the insurgent, the latter's suicide vest was detonated, mortally wounding him. And finally, Edmonds. A master sergeant, Edmonds was the ranking officer among American prisoners of war at a German camp in early 1945. According to the White House commendation, the Germans announced on January 26 of 1949 that only Jewish American prisoners would fall out for roll call the following morning at the threat of execution. Edmonds determined on that following day that allowing that segregation would result in a torture or death of 200 Jewish American POWs. He directed officers to have all 1,200 American troops present themselves for roll call. With the German commandant enraged, Edmonds stood his ground and invoked prisoners' rights under the international law. We are all Jews here, Edmonds said, a quote that Trump recounted Monday. The German officer relented and made no further efforts to identify the Jewish American soldiers. Weeks later, as Allied forces advanced toward the camp, the Germans ordered POWs to prepare for evacuation. Edmonds prepared the POWs to assemble in formation and resist. The German forces eventually retreated from the camp.
And you have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for March 3rd. We read from the Buffalo News live on weekdays and Sunday morning at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
J.J. Patek
and Lita. Thanks for listening. Take care, and as always, keep smiling.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have a